Hello everyone, this is Refresh, and I am here to bring you a battle between these two guilds of Ravnica Planeswalker decks. Over here we have Vraska, and over there we have Ral Zarek. We're going to be playing the best of three, and we will be rolling to see who goes first. Vraska rolls a 4, Ral rolls a 5, and Ral will opt to go first. We'll draw 7. Ral draws Command Storm, Island, Mountain, Fearless Halberdier, Goblin Electromancer, and Ral's Dispersal. This looks like a good opening hand, so we will keep that. Vraska draws 7. Vraska draws Iron Shell Beetle, Forest, Swamp, Crawl Raiders, Swamp, Rhizome Lurcher, and Deadweight. This also looks like a good start, so we will keep this as well. Ral will begin by playing a Mountain, and Ral will pass the turn. Vraska draws. She gets a Swamp. Vraska will play the Swamp, and then Vraska will pass the turn. Ral will draw. Ral gets a Fire Urchin. Ral will play a Island, and then Ral will tap the Mountain and the Island, and then play the Fire Urchin, and then Ral will pass the turn. Vraska will draw. Vraska gets a Crawl Raider. Vraska will play the Forest, and then Vraska will tap the Forest and the Swamp and play the Iron Shell Beetle. It says when Iron Shell Beetle enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. We'll choose the Iron Shell Beetle itself, making it a 2/2, and then Vraska will pass the turn. Ral untaps. Ral draws, gets a Precision Bolt. Ral will play a Mountain, and then Ral will attack with the Fire Urchin. Vraska will block with the Iron Shell Beetle. Nothing happens, they bounce off of each other, and then Ral will tap a Mountain, and an Island to play a Fearless Halberdier, which is a 3/2 Human Warrior, and then Ral will pass the turn. Vraska untaps. Vraska draws, gets a Forest. Vraska will play a Swamp, and then Vraska will tap 3 mana and play one of the Crawl Raiders. It is a 2/3 with Menace, and then Vraska will pass the turn. Ral untaps. Ral draws, gets an Island, will play the Island. Ral will tap a Island and a Mountain to play the Goblin Electromancer. It says instants and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Now that instants and sorcery spells cost 1 less to cast, Ral will tap an Island and a Mountain and casts a Precision Bolt, which costs 1 less to cast, targeting the Crawl Raider for 3 damage. Vraska has no responses. The Crawl Raider perishes. Because Ral cast a sorcery spell, the Fire Urchin gets +1/+0 until end of turn and is trampling, and then Ral will attack with the trampling Fire Urchin. Vraska will take 2 damage and go to 18, and then Ral will pass the turn. Vraska untaps. Vraska draws, gets a Forest. Vraska will play the Forest. Vraska will tap a Swamp, casting Deadweight on the Goblin Electromancer, giving it -2/-2. Ral has no response, and the Goblin Electromancer dies. And then Vraska will tap the remaining lands, and then play a second Crawl Raider, and then Vraska will pass the turn. Ral untaps. Ral draws, gets an Island. Ral will play the Island. Ral will tap all 5 mana, and then play Ral's Dispersal. It says return target creature to its owner's hand, and then you may search your library and or graveyard for a card named Ral, call or restore and reveal it, and put it into your hand. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. We will target the Crawl Raider. Vraska returns the Crawl Raider to her hand. Ral will search for Caller of Storms. We'll put it into our hand. We will shuffle our library. Because we cast an instant, the Fire Urchin will become a 2/3, and then we will attack with the 2/3 Fire Urchin. Vraska will decline to block because the Iron Shell Beetle is doing a good job of holding off the Fearless Halberdier. We'll take 2 and go to 16, and then Ral will pass the turn. Vraska untaps. Vraska draws, gets a Bartizan Bats. Vraska will play a Swamp. Vraska will spend 4 mana to play the Bartizan Bats, which are 3/1 flyers. And then Vraska will pass the turn. Ral untaps. Ral draws, gets a Hellkite Whelp. Ral will tap 5 mana and play the Hellkite Whelp. It is a 3/3 dragon with flying, and it says whenever Hellkite Whelp attacks, it deals 1 damage to target creature defending player controls. And then Ral will pass the turn. Vraska untaps. Vraska draws, gets a Lothlith Giant. Vraska will play a Forest. Vraska will attack with the Bartizan Bats for 3. Ral will take 3 and go to 17. Vraska will tap 3 mana and play the Kral Raider as a 2/3, and then Vraska will pass the turn. Ral untaps. Ral draws, gets a Fearless Halberdier. Ral will attack with the Hellkite Whelp, and it says whenever it attacks, it deals 1 damage to target creature. Will deal the damage to the Bartizan Bats. The Bartizan Bats die, and Vraska will take 3 from the Hellkite Whelp, going down to 13. On his second main, Ral will tap 3 mana and play another Fearless Halberdier, and then Ral will pass the turn. Vraska untaps. Vraska draws. She gets a Bounty of Might. Vraska will spend 4 mana to play a Rhizome Lurker. It has Undergrowth. When Rhizome Lurker enters the battlefield, Rhizome Lurker enters the battlefield with a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard, and it is a 2/2 by default. We have 2 creature cards in the graveyard, a Kral Raiders and a Bartizan Bats. And so we'll start with 2 +1/+1 counters, making it a 4/4. And then Vraska will pass the turn. Ral untaps. Ral will draw. Ral gets an island. He'll play the island. And then Ral will attack with the Hellkite Whelp for 3, dealing 1 damage to the Rhizome Lurker. The Rhizome Lurker takes 1, and then Vraska will take 3 to go down to 10. Then Ral will tap out and play himself as the Caller of Storms. He enters the battlefield with 4 loyalty counters, and then will immediately -2 down to 2 loyalty counters to deal 3 more damage to the Rhizome Lurker to finish it off. The Rhizome Lurker dies. And then Ral will pass the turn. Vraska untaps. Vraska draws, gets a Swamp. Vraska will play the Swamp, and then Vraska will tap everything and play the Lawless Giant. It has Undergrowth. When Lawless Giant enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to target opponent for each creature card in your graveyard. That is 3 creature cards, so Ral will take 3 damage. Ral takes 3 and goes to 14. And then Vraska will pass the turn. Ral untaps. Ral draws, getting a Direct Current. Ral will +1 Caller of Storms to draw another card, getting a Mountain. Ral will play the Mountain. Ral will spend 5 mana to cast Command the Storm, targeting the Lotleth Giant, dealing it 5 damage, and making the Fire Urchin a 2/3 Trampler. The Lotleth Giant dies. And then Ral will attack with the Hellkite Whelp, as well as both Fearless Halberdiers and the Fire Urchin. 1 damage going to the Kral Raider. Vraska will block each of the Halberdiers with both of her creatures, trading. She'll take 5 damage from the remaining 2 creatures, going down to 5. The Halberdiers die. And then Ral will pass the turn. Vraska untaps. Vraska draws, gets a Attendant of Vraska. Vraska will spend 3 mana and cast the Attendant of Vraska, which is a 3/3. If you control a Vraska Planeswalker, you gain life equal to the Attendant of Vraska's power. We do not, so we will pass the turn. Ral untaps. Ral draws, gets a Muse Drake. Ral will -2 to go to 1 loyalty counter to deal 2 damage to Attendant of Vraska and 1 damage to Vraska herself. Vraska takes 1 going to 4, and the Attendant is down to 1 health remaining. Ral will attack with the Hellkite Whelp and the Fire Urchin, dealing the final point of damage to the attendant of Vraska. The attendant dies, and then Vraska will take 4 damage to finish her off and give Ral the win this turn. Alright, Ral takes the win. We'll be back with game 2. Game 2, Vraska will choose to go first. We'll draw 7 cards. Vraska draws a Forest, Prey Upon, Swamp, Glowspore Shaman, Bounty of Might, Vraska Regal Gorgon, and Dowser of Lights. It's a little bit short on lands, but because we'll have the Glowspore Shaman early, we'll be able to get a land even if we mill it, so we're going to keep this hand. Ral draws 7. He gets a Ral Caller of Storms, Hellkite Whelp, Mountain, 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 Island. This is a very slow hand, and I do not think we can keep it, so we will return it and go to 6. Alright, we'll draw 7. We get a Ral's Dispersal, Mountain, Precision Bolt, Island, Leapfrog, Mountain, and Precision Bolt. I think this is a much more keepable hand, so we will do so, and then we will take Ral's Dispersal and put it at the bottom of the deck. Vraska will open with a Forest, and then Vraska will pass the turn. Ral draws, gets an Island. Ral will play the Island, and then Ral will pass the turn. Vraska draws, gets a Kral Raider. Vraska will play a Swamp, and will tap the Swamp and the Forest to play a Glowspore Shaman. It is a 3/1 Elf Shaman. It says when Glowspore Shaman enters the battlefield, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. You may put a land card from your graveyard on top of your library. Go ahead and put the top 3 cards in the graveyard, the first one being a Devarkan Dissident, the second one being a Swarm Guildmage, and the third one being an Attendant of Vraska. There are no lands there, but we needed a land, so that's actually not the worst situation. And then we will pass the turn. Ral draws a card, gets a Precision Bolt. Ral will play a Mountain, and Ral will pass the turn. Vraska untaps. Vraska draws, gets a Prey Upon, and then short on lands, but with the creature, Vraska will attack with the 3/1. Ral has no defense and no response, and will take 3 to go to 17. And then Vraska will pass the turn. Ral will draw, gets an Island. Ral will play a Mountain, and then Ral will tap 3 mana to play a Leapfrog. It is a 3/1 frog, and Leapfrog has flying as long as you've cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn. And then Ral will pass the turn. Vraska untaps. Vraska draws, gets herself a Bartizan Bats. Vraska will attack with the Glowspore Shaman. Ral will opt not to block and will take 3, going to 14. And then you need to defend herself, but seeing no better way out of this, Vraska will tap the Forest and cast Prey Upon, causing the Glowspore Shaman and the Leapfrog to fight, killing both of them. The Leapfrog dies, and then Vraska will pass the turn. Ral untaps. Ral draws, gets a Fearless Halberdier, will play the Island, will tap 3 mana, and play the Fearless Halberdier, and then Ral will pass the turn. Vraska untaps. Vraska draws, gets a Golgari Guildgate, will play that tapped, and then Vraska will pass the turn. Ral untaps. Ral draws, gets a Izzet Guildgate, will play the Izzet Guildgate tapped, and then Ral will attack with the Fearless Halberdier for 3. Vraska cannot block, will take 3 and go to 17, and then Ral will pass the turn. Vraska untaps. Vraska draws, gets a Beast Whisperer. Vraska will tap 3 mana and cast the Kral Raider, which is the only thing that Vraska can do, and then Vraska will pass the turn. Ral untaps. Ral draws, getting a Mountain. Ral will play the Mountain. Ral will tap 3 mana and play a Precision Bolt targeting the Kral Raiders, dealing 3 damage to it. The Kral Raiders die, and then Ral will attack with the Fearless Halberdier for 3. Vraska has no choice but to take another 3 to go to 14, and then Ral will pass the turn. Vraska untaps. Vraska draws. She gets an Iron Shell Beetle. Vraska doesn't have many options, so she will cast the Iron Shell Beetle. It'll get a counter on itself, and because it's going to be a long time before she can get the Dowser of Lights online, she is going to tap the Golgari Guildgate for green and then use Prey Upon to cause these two to kill each other. The Iron Shell Beetle dies. Ral loses the Fearless Halberdier, and then Vraska will pass the turn. Ral untaps. Ral draws, gets a mountain, and Ral will pass the turn. Vraska untaps. Vraska draws, gets a Kral Raider. Vraska will tap 3 mana and play the Kral Raider, and then Vraska will pass the turn. Ral draws, gets an Erratic Cyclops. Ral will tap 4 mana and play the Erratic Cyclops. Ral will also play an island, and then Ral will pass the turn. Vraska untaps. Vraska draws, gets a Vraska Stone Glare. It says destroy target creature. You gain life equal to its toughness, and you can search. It costs 6 mana though, so it's going to be a long time before we can cast that. And then Vraska will attack with the Kral Raider for 2. The Kral Raider has Menace, so Ral can't block. Will take 2 and go to 12. Vraska will pass the turn. Ral will untap. He'll draw. Gets a Goblin Electromancer. Ral will spend 2 mana and play the Goblin Electromancer. And then Ral will spend 2 more mana to play a Precision Bolt targeting the Kral Raider, dealing it 3 damage and causing the Erratic Cyclops to become a 3/8 Trampler. Vraska loses the Kral Raider. Ral will attack with the Erratic Cyclops for 3. Vraska has nothing to block, will take 3 and go to 11. And Ral will pass the turn. Vraska draws, gets a swamp. We play the swamp. We will tap out and then play a Beast Whisper with the hopes of getting some card draw online. And then Vraska will pass the turn. Ral untaps. Ral draws, gets a mountain. Ral will spend 2 mana and play Precision Bolt targeting the Beast Whisper, dealing it 3 damage and making the Erratic Cyclops a 3/8. The Beast Whisperer dies, and Ral will attack with the Electromancer and the Cyclops for 5. Vraska has no choice but to take 5 and go down to 6, and Ral will pass the turn. Vraska untaps. Vraska draws, gets a swamp, will play the swamp. Vraska will tap 5 mana and play the Dowser of Lights. It is a 4/5 horror, and Vraska will pass the turn. Ral untaps. Ral draws, getting a Ral Staticaster. It is a 3/3 Viashino Wizard with Trample, and it says whenever Ral Staticaster attacks, if you control a Ral Planeswalker, Ral Staticaster gets +1/+0 for each card in your hand until end of turn. We will tap 4 mana and cast the Staticaster, and then we will pass the turn. Vraska untaps. Vraska draws, gets a Glowspore Shaman. Vraska will tap 2 and play the Glowspore Shaman, dumping 3 more cards from the library into the graveyard. There's a forest, a swamp, and a Rhizome Lurker. We will go ahead and put the forest back on top of the deck, and then Vraska will pass the turn. Ral untaps. Ral draws, gets a Maximize Altitude. It says target creature gains +1/+1 and flying until end of turn. We will tap 1 blue mana and cast Maximize Altitude, giving Ral's Staticaster a +1/+1 and flying until end of turn. And then we will use the Jumpstart ability here and tap 1 more mana to cast Maximize Altitude again, discarding a mountain and exiling the Maximize Altitude to make the Goblin Electromancer a +1/+1 and flying as well. And then Ral will attack with the 2 flying 4/4 and 3/3 creatures, the Erratic Cyclops being a 2/8, but no reason to attack with that. Vraska has no response, will take 7 damage and will perish, giving the win to Ral Zarek. And Ral Zarek wins the day in straight sets. His deck does seem a lot more powerful thanks to the high amount of interaction that it has, but let me know what your thoughts were about this game in the comments below. If you have any experience with either of these decks, also let me know if I was playing any of them incorrectly, if I made any rules or play errors, also let me know, and I will strive to be better than future. If you enjoyed this video, hit like. If you'd like to see more such videos, hit subscribe. Next time, I'll be back with a battle between these 2 Planeswalker decks and the Face the Hydra Challenge deck from Theros. Until then, this was Refresh, and thanks for watching.